Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Curious by Nature with Deep Roots. I'm your host, Sydney Ross. We have a great show for you today as we check out an established native rooftop garden in the heart of Kansas City. This nearly 20-year-old garden is an example of what green infrastructure can do in light of climate change. From beautiful blooms inspired by glades, acrobatic ants, to the benefits of native plants, this episode has it all. Whether you're joining us live on Zoom, watching the recording on YouTube, or listening to this on our new podcast, we're glad you're here, where we explore native plants and landscapes across the Midwest. And yes, you heard right. If you're on the go, perhaps you're working in your garden and prefer to listen to our show, you can tune in anywhere you listen to podcasts by searching Curious by Nature with Deep Roots. If you enjoy our programs, be sure to subscribe to the show. Now, before we get started, I just have a few announcements to make. First, I'd like to thank the Missouri Department of Conservation and Mid-America Regional Council for sponsoring today's program. Both organizations are making a difference, strengthening communities and supporting nature across Missouri and the Midwest. I'd also like to thank donors like you for making programs like this possible. This Saturday, September 20th, I'm leading a guided naturalist walk on the Blue River Streamway Trail in Overland Park, Kansas. If you saw our recent episode, part 1 on the Blue River Valley with Johnson County Parks and Recreation District, then you saw this cool wetland system that was created to mitigate pollution from running into the Blue River. Join me and other nature enthusiasts for a leisurely walk this Saturday as we look for bugs, birds, and cool native plants along the way. Following today's program, I'll send you all show notes that include resources and links to the events mentioned. All right, y'all. For those who enjoy listening to the always entertaining and slightly misanthropic botanist Joey Santor of Crime Pays but Botany Doesn't, then you're in for a treat. Next Wednesday evening, his Kill Your Lawn tour will visit the Anita B. Gorman Conservation Discovery Center here in Kansas City. In this presentation, Santor will discuss the inadequacies of lawn culture for anything other than the purposes of dog crap, picnics, sports fields, as well as the benefits of native plants, why modern horticulture itself is disconnected from region and reality, and why the plants that evolved in a place are so fundamentally connected to the climate, soils, and other life forms that form the living skin of that region. This program is recommended for adults and includes explicit language. You can get your tickets online at deeproots.org. And finally, I'm thrilled to announce that registration is live for our native plant conference, Planet Native. Perfect for native plant enthusiasts and natural resource professionals alike, our annual conference is back, February 10th through 11th, 2026, right here in Kansas City. We'll have 21 regional and national concurrent speakers who are native plant experts. Our keynote speakers are poet and professor Camille Dungy, author of Soil, The Story of a Black Mother's Garden, and Abigail Derby Lewis, the executive director of Citizens for Conservation. Early bird tickets are now on sale for $225, and you can get yours today at planetnative.org. Also, I guess not finally, but now finally, I'm super excited for our next month's webinar presentations, and our guest expert will be yours truly. I have always wanted to do a program on native gardening with pop culture aesthetics. If you've ever walked with me, you've sometimes heard me jokingly refer to plants as goth or super cute, which they totally are. So if you want to learn some kind of non-traditional, perhaps unconventional native plant palettes like cottagecore, mid-century modern, tropical, but all under the lens of our Midwestern native plants, I hope you'll tune in with me on our next episode on Curious by Nature, October 2nd at noon. Be sure to check it out. Also, I need to mention, I apologize for the hiccup from Zoom. You may have gotten an email that was not addressed to your proper name. That was an accident, and hopefully we'll get it right next time. As always, this webinar will be recorded and all resources available online. As I mentioned, I'm going to send you all show notes, which include links and resources following this event. Don't forget, drop your comments in the chat and put your questions in the Q&A. Our guest expert tonight will be joining us live following our video to answer your audience questions live. Following tonight's show, I hope you'll visit us online at deeproots.org, where you can find more information on upcoming events, webinars, native gardening resources, and how to get involved. While you're there, consider making a donation. Okay, I'd like to go ahead and welcome today's guest expert, Maggie Riggs. She is the owner of Off the Grid Landscaping and one of the original founders of this garden. Good evening, Maggie. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, we're so delighted to have you, Maggie. You were such a joy to walk around the gardens with,
Oh,
such a wealth of knowledge. So we're thrilled to have you tonight.
thank you so much. I love sharing the stories of the rooftop with anybody that's enraptured with it like I am.
Yes, I love that. So before we kick off tonight's program, I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got interested in gardening with native plants.
Well, I'm laughing because your show pretty much says it all, curious by nature. And so my partner, Dr. Kelly Kincher, he's a botanist at Kansas University. He just introduced me to the whole realm of native plants. And as we traveled around and I researched with him kind of as a sidekick as assistant, I learned about how they could just like thrive in the most, challenging environments. And so in Kansas City, there was a push to have architects design buildings that would slow down the rainwater into the sewage system, especially for like 100-year event. And the architects that designed that garden actually did it with that in mind, and they got subsidies for it. And so the water that comes off that roof goes through these pipes that are perforated, and it goes through the ground before it hits the sewers. So that they got that going for that reason. And then Kelly was hired, and Kelly turned it over to me because he realized it really was going to take a lot of creativity and love, and that he had other things on his plate. So I was delighted, but he did coach me through it. He gave me the initial menu of plants. But as I looked into what people were doing, and Chicago was the lead there because they had ozone level, sidewalk level ozone. And so they stopped giving subsidies for any new buildings unless they had a rooftop garden or a reflective roof. So they really kicked off the industry, and they were only into sedums, the little guys. And that just didn't make sense to me. And besides, I knew so much about natives and almost nothing about sedums. And so I asked Kelly, I said, do you think I could do this? It's only like 4 to 6 inches of gravel dirt. And yeah, I could bunch it up around the roots, but that's going to give me 6 to 8. He said, yes. I have my files of 20 other experts in the Midwest that said absolutely not. So, of course, I was curious to see if it was right. So I did it. And he was right. And so there it began with just a dream. It had never been done before. And because I was nervous, I actually planted 2 gardens. I planted a complete understory of sedum in case it didn't work. And then I planted a complete overstory of natives. And over the years, we just couldn't keep the sedums alive. They could not compete with the natives. And so that's how it started.
I love it. That's so fascinating. And yeah, I often see sedum akin to a rooftop garden. And I'm so glad you broke earth to figure out native plants do work well. And I believe it gets covered in today's show. But can you describe what the roots do? Like, we see the graphics of how roots typically, some of them go like 60 feet
Yeah,
deep. So what do they do in those 4 to 6 inches of soil?
that's my favorite question because the first 4 years, I kept thinking, they're going to bust through the ceiling because we really don't know. And even Kelly was like, oh, I really don't know. But then I had a problem with a runaway child. The anemone would not stop taking things over. So it was about year 5 or 6. And I said, we're pulling up the whole bed. That bed's got to go. We've got to get that under control. And there wasn't dirt anymore. The roots had formed a sod. So what we had actually done was grown an insulation for the building. And we pulled it up. It was a mat of about 6 by 10 feet. And it came up in one piece and it had the impression of the building on the underside. And I was flabbergasted.
Wow. That's
So probably the biggest surprise of the whole project is that I do think it also offers natural insulation. And we further research should be done on that. And if that's the reason you're going to use it, then I would have a different approach. Once I got it grown, I would not dig into it. I would let it be seamless. But that's what happened with the roots. They just spread out and they formed sod. And you can tell, we learn about sod, but I'd actually never seen it. And you can see how you could have cut it into bricks and built houses with it. It's pretty
wow.
substantial. So
That's so
that's,
cool.
yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you for sharing that and telling us a little bit about your background. We really appreciate it. So, folks, you can see how passionate Maggie is about native plants and this rooftop garden. So, I hope you will ask questions to Maggie in our Q&A because she will be joining us again live following our footage here. So, we're going to go ahead and jump in, Maggie. And, folks, I hope you enjoyed today's Curious by Nature episode, Native Rooftop Garden Part 2, The Growing Season, with guest expert Maggie Riggs. Enjoy, everybody. Okay, that was awesome. I want to go ahead and welcome back to the virtual stage, Maggie Riggs. And we're going to jump into our live Q&A. So folks who are tuning in live, go ahead and drop your questions into the Q&A section, and Maggie and I are going to jump right in.
I'm
So
trying.
I got you. I think I
Oh,
just
am I there? Okay, good.
almost. I just asked you to share. There we go.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. So we've got some really great questions here in the Q&A.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So let's see. I'm going to start us off with we've got a question about weeds in this garden. So have weed successes diminished over time at all? The presumption is the same weed seeds still continue to blow in, as Gavin described so eloquently in this video.
Um, a lot of our weeds are actually our native plants that don't want to play well with others, like prairie dropseed. It we have to be really careful to trim it as soon as it goes into bloom because its seeds are so little and they're really hard to remove. And sometimes the plant won't play well with others and has become weedy, like sawtooth sunflower. And we just had to take it out. It had to leave the park. We do a lot of weeding, and it's just what we do a lot of. And so when people look at it and think, oh, it's just wild, she just threw the seeds out there and they water a little, and look at, we weed a lot. So, but a lot of it is the native plants themselves.
Yeah, definitely. We'll talk about that a little more. What does a typical season, growing season, spring, summer, fall look like for you and your team in terms of maintenance out there?
Well, it starts out slow, and in the beginning, it's beautiful because so many of these natives are warm season plants. And so they don't really get into their growth until May. And then they're really in peak in June and the beginning of July. Meanwhile, the weeds start coming up bright and early. They're not waiting for the warm. So in the early part, we kind of, we just keep pulling, and at no time is it weed free. And the way I ask my crew to approach it is like when you tend to Chinese garden, they tell you don't remove anything until you've looked at the plant from all. And that's kind of what I asked them to do. This is first and foremost here for the beauty of the tenant. And so if what we're calling a weed, there's a lot of it, but it's filling a green space and it's making it look beautiful, then work with it because it's your paint on the palette.
I love that. That's such a great consideration. And do you have a favorite gardening tool while you're working up there or just in general?
Well, I like the one with it's a trowel and it's got a jagged tip to it, and that works pretty well. But I'm glad you brought up tools because that's a huge part of this. Since we cannot puncture, and knock on wood, we're almost 20 years into this, and they haven't had a single leak from our garden. But you have to remind everybody. They'll see occasionally a tree will blow in and it'll actually get rooted pretty well before we can get it. And your temptation is to get that shovel. It is in the closet, but it can only be used with my supervision, has to go in an angle. So just learning how to use your tools so that you don't puncture the membrane is a big part.
Absolutely, that makes complete sense. And actually, this is a perfect segue. We have a great question about that from Christine. Are you concerned about the weight of the developing sod, and how much weight was the building designed to hold? Can you shed some light on that?
I think that that is the question when you consider a rooftop garden. And I'll give you a little background. In my idealistic idea for this, I imagine that we would compost the grasses and then we would use that to grow fruit and vegetables. And we actually did quite a lot of that, but the weight became the problem because although they designed these for even more than the weight that we put on. I noticed with the composting material, even though I put it near the edges where it would be the strongest, I was getting too much weight. And so it's unbelievable how much weight in grass we remove every year. Every year we say we're going to measure it, but tons. Um, it's amazing that it can keep producing this much in the full sun with, like Gavin says, very little fertilizer. Occasionally we fertilize, but not often. And so, yeah.
That's a great answer. It's really fascinating. And again, I know there are rooftop gardens out there, but not a lot of information about native perennials on rooftop gardens. So thank you.
Right. I'd like to, I don't know if somebody will ask, but I'd like to talk about our attempts at growing food up there.
Yeah, please, go for it.
Do you have another question? The viewer?
I've got
Okay.
several, but if you want to briefly talk about it, that's great. Yeah.
Well, I just want to say that we tried a lot of experiments. This was an experiment for natives, but it was also what kind of synergy can we get between natives and food? We grew 5 big watermelons up there, and we opened them during a tour. But what actually turned out to be excellent synergy were strawberries. And to this day, we've got strawberries growing all over the roof. And when it got very hot and the water systems gave out, literally the strawberry plants crawled underneath the umbrella of the wilting little blue stem, and they stayed there and they both made it through together. And I like that story of how well they work together. It's just very heartwarming to me that we learned that, and now I can pass that on with a lot of confidence that your
Nice.
little blue and your strawberries will love living together.
I love that. It's like we need to rewrite the book.
Yeah.
Carrots love roses. Wait, well,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, but
Yeah.
yeah, the companion planting guide. I love that. That's so great.
No, we did a lot of we grew cherry tomatoes a lot. We had a complete herb garden, and in fact, because I really like to keep my young bright stars engaged, they would literally there was a buy local restaurant that you could see from the rooftop, and they would get them on the phone and they would tell them what we had growing in herbs, and they would put in their order and they would take down this beautiful basket of fresh herbs just picked, and they would trade it for lunch.
I love that. That's so
I
great.
loved it too.
When you toured with me and our crew, you treated me to some strawberries that were growing right up there on the roof, and I can tell y'all they were delicious.
They were sweet. They weren't your hydroponic strawberries that look good with no flavor.
Right. They
These
had so
are
much flavor.
awesome. It's the little blue that gives them flavor, I think.
I believe it. I believe it. Okay,
They like
before we jump into our next question,
fruit.
I want to remind folks that we do a pop quiz during this program. And if you get the answer correct, today you're going to win a copy of Dr. Doug Tallamy's Nature's Best Hope, as well as a Ask Me About My Milkweed bumper sticker by local Kansas City artist Andy Osier. So the way that this works, here are the rules, everybody. Locate your chat option, okay? It's down at the bottom. And then I want you to select send chat to everyone. So that way we can all see your answers. And if you were paying attention, you should be able to get this question correct. So the first person to answer correctly in the chat will win both the book and the bumper sticker. Earlier on in the webinar, we were talking about ants. How many ants per human exist on Earth? I'll let you all answer in the chat, and I will check our answers here just a little bit later, but continue on with our questions. Okay, so our next question is from Don Matthews. What was the initial soil composition used on the rooftop?
Well, we called it gravel dirt. It was about 50% gravel, and the rest was organic matter. It was made by Missouri Organics, and it was applied to the rooftop through, a large machine that came and deposited it. And then we tried to get it level. But speaking of which, as I imagined putting this garden in, and we're on a rooftop, and the Kansas, Missouri winds are just, whipping about. And I thought, and I've got plants that are like 2 inches tall, and I'm thinking, they're just going to blow away. But there was weight to it. And so you can imagine my shock when we went from gravel dirt to sod. It's like it's all gone. It's all been transformed. Yeah.
Amazing. It blows my mind. And then a follow-up question from a couple folks. I know that this is a private garden. Are there any events or opportunities for folks to come visit?
There are. I can't tell you any right now, but how about I get back with you when I know? Sometimes they'll do a tour, a garden tour that you can get in on. Or we're trying to initiate right now some fundraisers to have little soiree up there with the band and just at sunset, because it's so incredibly fun when the neon lights of the city come up and you've got all these blooms around. It's just the most fanciful environment. So I'll also let you know we're working on that. We could do one. You know what? We could do one for Curious by Nature Deep Roots.
I love that idea.
Yes, let's do it.
That'd be so fun. Well, folks, we'll keep you posted on our progress on that, but I think that would be delightful to have
I think it'd really be great.
A little event for us all to get together and talk to you.
A fundraiser, yep.
Perfect.
A fundraiser.
A fundraiser. I love it. Okay, folks, we are nearing the end of our program today, and for the questions that we don't get answered live, we will include them in the show notes that I will be sending out to you all tomorrow. So make sure you keep an eye out for that in case we don't get to your answer today. So one question is, are there any scholarly articles written about this site? One of our viewers is interested, especially in recent ones.
Yes, I was impressed to find out how many people actually had written about this. And I will get back to Sydney with these and let you know. But it was very exciting to me to see that a lot of the professors that have brought their students up to look at it have also published on it. And one of the things that they published quite widely on is that how important it is to insects in the urban island. And honestly, there are so many bumblebee butts in the penstemon blooms in the spring. It is like animation. You're working, and all these little really fluffy butts are just going crazy, thousands of them. And yeah, so there's the answer to that. I'm dying to tell you all one thing, and that's like,
please go for it.
Okay. And that is that there were some real shockers. And one of them was that we went up there and the grasses had become overgrown in the back third where people don't really have a close view. So we get to them last. And we unveiled a duck's nest. and there were five
Oh,
beautiful eggs in it. So we stayed away from that area because we had plenty of other work to do, and they hatched out. And
oh,
so we would open the roof, and there would be the mama duck with her five little ducklings walking around. And occasionally they would fall off the roof, and but they had enough wings that they could break their fall. And then the front desk would call and say, Maggie, we've got one of your ducklings down at the front desk again. And so it was like, Robert McCloskey's book, Make Way for Ducklings, but it was on the roof. And I kept and one day they just flew, but I kept imagining we're going to have to take them down through all the floors of people working here and down to a pond, but they flew. That was a lot of fun. Another great thing that I want you to imagine is a 10-foot tall, big blue stem that does not fall down all winter. The
ooh.
big blue stems look like totem poles up there. They're amazing. And we have to control them. But who would have thought? I never would have thought that they would stay erect all winter, but they do. And yeah, and then one other thing, I guess what I want to say is this is a wild environment, and I gave into it. When I planted it, I was doing it like a quilt. I measured inch by inch, the whole entire thing. It was ridiculous. And I had to let it have its way. It was not going to be a quilt. And so amazing things happened by me saying, okay, you can be wild, and we make space between plants so that they pop out, but we basically don't control them the way we used to anymore. And so, yeah, so in that approach, we had a wave of purple poppy mallow that went 30 feet long. It had just took off. It went over the tops of little blue, penstemon, liatris, it didn't matter what. And it was probably 20 feet wide. And I could never get it back. So I realized that some of these things that happen, it's wild, like, stand back and watch. I laughed when Gavin said that. Stand back and watch.
I love it. I love it. That was my favorite way to close out the show. Just get out of the way. Let the plants do their thing. Do
Yeah,
it.
it was so good.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we're going to go ahead and announce the pop quiz winner. So folks, go ahead and tune into the chat real quick. I sent our winner a note that they have won, and I just want to acknowledge, yes, we are aware Zoom has messed up the names associated with the emails. We apologize. We hope to get it right next time. So don't worry, we're fully aware. Um, I believe it's Meredith Donaldson who won today's prize, but please go ahead, Meredith, if you are the one that you see the message from me, go ahead and confirm that, and then go ahead and send me your address, even though I know I already have it because I've sent you things before. But congratulations, you just received a copy of Nature's Best Hope, as well as Ask Me About My Milkweed bumper sticker. All right, Maggie. Well, I just want to thank you for joining us today. You were such a joy to talk to,
Thank
and
you. I loved it.
I'm glad. And we'll definitely get together again soon on the rooftop to check out the beautiful garden.
Okay, folks listening, we're going to send you a message when we're having our soiree for Deep Roots.
We sure are. We sure are. So, okay, folks, go ahead and be sure to join us next time as I discuss native gardening with pop culture aesthetics, a fun, kind of tongue-in-cheek way to explore different native plant palettes and discover your gardening goals. So, join us next time on Curious by Nature with Deep Roots, and have a great rest of your evening. Thanks, Maggie.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.